Hello and welcome back to Larry's Furries, where you learn about animals and learn how to pronounce your teacher's name. So, as I discussed last week, we've now gone through Memorial Day weekend, which although of course it's a holiday to honor our fallen heroes, it's not really something we can do at Larry's Furries. So instead, we're focusing here on the other aspect of it. That Memorial Day is the unofficial start of the summer vacation season, and for today and for the month of June in Larry's Furries videos, I will be highlighting various zoos, places where you can go over the summer to have a great day and see and learn about animals. While you Even though you're not in school and not hearing my weekly updates anymore. So this week's zoo is one that I'm somewhat reluctant to recommend. It's not the best, and in fact probably going to be the worst of the zoos that I'm featuring. But it does have some benefits. What's that? Space. So this Space Farm Zoo. So it's fairly close to us, about an hour 20-minute drive from Classical Academy, up in northern Sussex County. So 80 west to 15 north, and then local roads for your driving directions. The admission is somewhat high at $20.50 for an adult, and only $17, so not that much of a discount on the child rate. And part of the reason for this is that this is the only one of the zoos that we're going to be featuring that is a privately owned for-profit enterprise, rather than being run by a government or a non-profit foundation. So being privately owned has a few repercussions. For one, this Space Farms does not follow the most modern zookeeping practices. I wouldn't consider it cruel to animals, but they're definitely not receiving what we currently consider state of the art treatment. The animals tend to be in fairly small enclosures, not tight in, as I said, not small enough to be that I would consider them cruel to the animals, but not the kind of big habitat recreations that you see in the most modern zoos. Space Farms also maintains the old-fashioned policy of selling animal feed to guests and letting the guests feed animals themselves, which is, from a dietary nutritional standpoint for the animals, isn't great, but it does have the advantage for visitors in that you get tamer animals that are more inclined to come forward and be seen with, so for example, for me visiting and photographing the animals to show you, this was great. I had a whole bunch of good pictures available, and had to actually choose which animal I wanted to talk about, rather than choosing which animal came out best on camera. Also, in addition to the animal exhibits, the Space Farms also has museum collections of sorts, all sorts of artifacts, and so antique vehicles, farm implements, tools, dolls, clocks, Native American artifacts. Also, this display also is not really what I consider up to modern museum standards. Rather than displaying the artifacts in a setting to try to maximally educate the viewer about them. It's more the kind of display where you have where you have a huge numbers of artifacts, crammed into space, and with only small signs indicating what's what. So it's not the greatest place from an animal education standpoint, or for that matter, education of other things, but there's still fairly large exhibit collections that you can learn quite a bit from. Also, because this is a private zoo rather than a non-profit institution, it's not really involved in animal conservation efforts, so you're not going to find rare animals here at Space Farm Zoo. You're going to find exhibits of a lot of mostly fairly common species. So a lot of domestic animals, a lot of animals that were former research exhibits, like some of the primates. They do. Common in this sense doesn't necessarily mean not endangered. For instance, they do have all of the big cats, lions, tigers, a leopard, and those are all pretty endangered, but they're also well known. There's plenty of captive breeding going on in those kinds of species. So they're not dealing with rare animals, but you still have a fairly large variety of animals to look at, and as I said, it's an environment where from perspective of going and seeing the animals, it's a lot more convenient than what you might consider a better run zoo. So with this in mind, let's turn today's animal, which again I chose more on the basis of being interesting than being rare or being easy to photograph. So this week's featured animal, Kingdom Animalia, of course, because it's still an animal. Phylum Chordata. We are dealing with vertebrates. Some zoos actually have some collections of invertebrates around to exhibit, but Space Farms isn't one of them. Class Mammalia, so we're dealing with an actually furry, Lurie's Furries today. In particular, we're in order Carnivora. So remember that carnivorans are not necessarily carnivores, but they include most of the mammals that we typically think of as them. So all of the cats, all of the canines, all the weasels. In this case, we are dealing with family Kennedy. We're dealing with a canine, a dog, wolf, etc. In this case, we're specifically dealing with Urocyon cinereoargenteus, the gray fox, which, although not rare, is very unusual among canines for several reasons, which we'll see. Whoop, if I get the slide moving in the correct direction. Here we go. Now this is a fairly small canine. The length is 30 to 4 inches. The weight is 8 to 15 pounds. So there you see the picture of it in its enclosure. At Space Farms, it's kind of napping under its little canopy here, because gray foxes are mostly nocturnal in the wild, although of course ones in zoos like this have gotten accustomed to the presence of humans during the daytime, so they're not as nocturnal as their wild brethren. So things that make the gray fox distinctive among dogs. So first off, gray foxes are true omnivores. Unlike your family pet, your family dog, which might eat anything that you give to it in the house. But if you left your dog to go feral, it would be pretty much just just acting as a carnivore and eating meat. Gray foxes are true omnivores, so in the wild they will go, they will look for and gather fruit, which forms a much larger proportion of their diet than it would of any of the carnivorous wolves or foxes. But they do still eat animals, small animals mostly. Rabbits are about the biggest things they'll go for. And then the various rodents, mice, voles, shrews, etc. And they will eat it. They will eat insects as well. And the other distinctive feature gray foxes are known for, different from any other canine, is that gray foxes climb trees. So climbing trees, of course, enables them to catch things in the trees. So, for instance, in addition to the animals I mentioned on the slide, they will eat birds if they can catch them, and they're more likely to than a lot of other canines because they can get them up in the tree. And there's also provide them shelter from larger predators. Wolves and coyotes and such would happily eat a gray fox, except that those species can't climb into the trees, so the fox can easily escape from them. Gray foxes also frequently den up in trees, natural hollows, anything that's been vacated by its other residents, or either naturally vacated or vacated because the fox ate whatever was living in there. Foxes tend not to make their own burrows, even when denning on the ground. They'll take an abandoned rabbit hole rather than digging their own. And so, given that they climb trees, it's not surprising that they would live. Again, why is the slide? Okay, there we go. Given that they climb trees, it's not surprising that they would live where there are trees. So, gray foxes, historically associated with deciduous forest habitat. So basically, they would be some of our local wildlife back before humans heavily developed our part of the country. But they do have a very broad range. They're found throughout North and Central America. They don't necessarily need to live in forests. They can live in any kind of brushy habitat, so scrublands, just fine. And given that they have this wide habitat, wide and varied diet, they're small. They can easily avoid any various forms of danger. So gray foxes survive very, very well. They're not at all endangered. So part of why they're readily available for a zoo like space farms to acquire, because they're common. Space farms could get them pretty cheaply. But nevertheless, they're just cool animals. Interesting, unique, well worth studying, even if they are one of the more common species that we've exhibited. All right. So finally, first is, since we're dealing with a very common animal here, I didn't need to go for any exotic research. Information is all from Wikipedia. Information at the zoo, of course, is from the zoo website, which is there. You you can pre-order tickets online, although this zoo, unlike some of the others these days, doesn't require it and doesn't seem to have to offer any huge advantage for buying online. So maybe not bother. And of course, all the photography in this is pretty much my own. And so, you know, the other picture of the gray fox they showed here, you know, to give you a shot of it that wasn't behind bars, and you could see its whole body. That was actually released by the state of California, and government sourced pictures tend to be public domain, so no copyright issues here.